Richard Simmons was no stranger to luxury. A self-made millionaire who thrived in the world of real estate, he had grown used to having people cater to his every whim. His success made him arrogant, and he often took pleasure in asserting his superiority over others. On a brisk Tuesday evening, Richard decided to treat himself to a meal at the Silver Spoon, an upscale restaurant known for its fine dining and impeccable service. As he walked in, he didn't even glance at the staff who rushed to open the door for him. They were invisible to him, mere background to his grand entrance. After taking his seat at a prime table, Richard began scanning the menu with an air of boredom, as if nothing there could possibly impress him. Lily Roberts approached his table with a warm smile, despite the slight limp that marked her stride. She had worked at the Silver Spoon for over a year, and though her disability made the job physically demanding, she took pride in her work and always aimed to provide the best service. "Good evening, sir. May I take your order?" she asked politely. Richard didn't even look up at her. "About time," he muttered under his breath. He glanced at her for a moment, and his eyes immediately zeroed in on her leg. The scowl that spread across his face made it clear that he didn't appreciate the sight of her. "Is this some kind of joke?" he sneered. "Why would they hire someone who can barely walk to wait on tables? Are they trying to ruin my dining experience?" Lily's smile faltered, but she held her ground. "I assure you, sir, I am fully capable of providing excellent service," she responded calmly. "Oh, I doubt that," Richard snapped back. "People like you don't belong in places like this. You're just dragging everyone else down." His voice was loud enough that other diners began to turn their heads, and Lily could feel their eyes on her, judging her, pitying her. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to let him see her falter. She nodded and continued taking his order, as if his words hadn't stung her to her very core. However, Richard wasn't done. As she turned to leave, he called out, "You know, you should really consider a job where people won't have to look at you struggling. You'd be doing everyone a favor." The humiliation was almost too much to bear. Lily could feel her face burning, tears threatening to spill, but she managed to walk away with her head held high. It wasn't the first time someone had judged her for her disability, but something about Richard's cruelty hit harder than any of the others. Still, she had no choice but to continue working, because she needed this job to support herself and her family. As she went about the rest of her shift, she couldn't shake the memory of Richard's sneer and the disgust in his eyes when he looked at her. It was a moment that would stay with her for a long time. Lily had always known that life wasn't going to be easy for her. Born with a congenital condition that caused a deformity in her left leg, she had undergone several surgeries as a child to correct the damage. Despite the procedures, her leg never fully recovered, leaving her with a permanent limp and chronic pain that often worsened with physical exertion. Growing up, she had endured endless taunts from classmates who called her names and made fun of the way she walked. But every time she was knocked down, she got back up. It was a lesson her mother had drilled into her from a young age. You can't control how people see you, Lily, but you can control how you see yourself. Lily's mother, Sarah, was her biggest supporter. A single parent who had worked multiple jobs to keep food on the table, Sarah always encouraged Lily to chase her dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed. "You have a gift, sweetheart," she'd say whenever Lily was in the kitchen, helping her prepare meals. "You're going to make people happy with your cooking someday." Inspired by her mother's words, Lily spent countless hours in the kitchen, experimenting with different flavors and techniques. She dreamed of becoming a chef and owning a restaurant where people would come not just for the food, but for the warmth and love she poured into every dish. However, reality had a way of crushing dreams. After her mother fell ill, Lily had to take on several jobs to pay for the medical bills, and her dream of attending culinary school faded into the background. Now, working as a waitress at the Silver Spoon, Lily was constantly reminded of the gap between where she was and where she wanted to be. But every night, after she clocked out, she would return home and cook a simple meal for her mother, who would always praise her, no matter how tired or worn out she was. "You're going to get there, Lily," her mother would say. "You're stronger than you think." But Richard's words replayed in her mind that night, chipping away at the confidence she had fought so hard to build. "People like you don't belong in places like this." For the first time in a long time, Lily questioned whether her dream was even worth pursuing. 2 weeks passed after the incident at the restaurant, and Lily tried her best to forget about Richard Simmons. Then, one afternoon, she received an envelope in the mail with her name written in elegant cursive. Inside was an invitation to a charity gala hosted by Evelyn Carter, a renowned entrepreneur and philanthropist. The invitation explained that the gala was meant to celebrate unseen heroes, people who had overcome significant obstacles in their lives and had made a difference in their communities. Lily was stunned. She had never considered herself a hero. In her eyes, she was just someone trying to get by, doing what needed to be done to support herself and her mother. After much encouragement from her mother, Lily decided to attend. She borrowed a simple but elegant dress from a friend and did her best to hide her limp with a pair of comfortable but stylish shoes. As she entered the grand ballroom, she was overwhelmed by the opulence around her. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the soft hum of conversation filled the air as elegantly dressed guests mingled and sipped champagne. As she moved through the crowd, Lily spotted a familiar face, Richard Simmons. He was deep in conversation with a group of businessmen, laughing loudly and gesturing wildly with his hands. For a moment, Lily considered leaving, not wanting to be reminded of that humiliating night. But something inside her told her to stay. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to let Richard take it away from her. A few moments later, a voice echoed through the ballroom, announcing that the ceremony would begin. Lily was called up to the stage, her heart pounding in her ears as she made her way up, each step a reminder of the pain and struggles she had faced. She could see Richard watching her now, his face showing a flicker of recognition, but she kept her focus on the audience. "Good evening," Lily began, her voice trembling but growing stronger with each word. "I was told this gala is to honor unseen heroes, but I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who's been fighting to survive." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I've been told countless times that I'm not good enough, that I don't belong, that I'm a burden. But I've learned that it's not what others think that defines us. It's what we believe about ourselves." Lily's voice cracked as she continued. "I've had people look at me and see only my disability. They've told me to hide, to be ashamed. But I refuse to be invisible. I refuse to let their words determine my worth." She glanced at Richard, who now stood frozen, guilt etched across his face. "Because I know that I have something to offer, and no amount of cruelty will take that away from me." The room erupted in applause, and for the first time in a long time, Lily felt seen, truly seen, not as someone with a disability, but as someone with a dream, a voice, and a purpose. And in that moment, she knew that she would never let anyone take that away from her again. After the applause died down, Lily stepped off the stage, her heart still pounding from the adrenaline of sharing her story in front of so many people. It had taken every ounce of courage to stand there and reveal her vulnerabilities, but she felt a weight lifting off her shoulders. As she walked through the crowd, guests approached her, offering words of encouragement and praise. They spoke of how inspired they were by her resilience and determination. And for the first time in a long while, Lily felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, her dream was within reach. In the midst of the crowd, she caught sight of Richard Simmons again. His usual confident demeanor had been replaced by something else, something she hadn't expected to see on his face: regret. His eyes were fixed on her, and she could see the turmoil behind them. For a moment, she thought he might turn and walk away, avoiding the uncomfortable reality he now had to face. But instead, he slowly began making his way toward her, weaving through the elegantly dressed guests with a purpose she hadn't seen in him before. When he finally stood in front of her, Richard looked different. The arrogance and dismissiveness that had once defined him seemed to have vanished. He looked older, more worn, as if the weight of his own actions had taken a toll on him. For a moment he said nothing, simply standing there, his gaze searching her face, as if trying to find the right words. I owe you an apology," Richard began, his voice quieter and softer than Lily had ever heard it. "What I said to you that night was unforgivable. I was cruel, and there's no excuse for how I treated you. I want you to know that I am truly, deeply sorry." Lily was taken aback. Of all the things she had expected that night, an apology from Richard Simmons was not one of them. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Her instinct was to brush him off, to tell him that his apology didn't matter and that she had already moved on. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something she hadn't expected, genuine remorse. And it wasn't just the empty words of someone trying to save face. Richard was truly sorry for what he had done. "You hurt me," Lily said quietly, meeting his gaze. "You made me feel like I was less than human, like I didn't deserve to be here." "I know," Richard replied, his voice choked with emotion. "And I will always regret that. I've spent my entire life looking down on people, thinking that money and success made me better than everyone else. But the truth is, I've never felt more ashamed than I do right now, standing in front of you." There was a pause, and Richard took a deep breath, as if trying to summon the strength to continue. "I realize tonight that I've spent my whole life chasing things that don't matter. Money, status, power. They're all meaningless if you don't have kindness, compassion, and respect for others. And you showed me that. You made me see just how empty my life has been." Lily could feel the sincerity in his words, and something inside her softened. She didn't know if she could ever truly forgive him, but she could see that he was trying to make amends. "Thank you," she said finally, "for apologizing. It means a lot." Richard nodded, a look of relief washing over his face. "I want to do more than just apologize," he said, his voice growing stronger. "I want to help you. You have a talent, Lily, a gift that the world needs to see, and I want to make sure that happens." Before Lily could respond, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, elegantly designed business card. "I own a chain of restaurants, some of the most successful in the country," Richard explained, "and I want you to come work for me as a chef. I've seen what you can do. You deserve to have your talents recognized, and I want to give you that opportunity." Lily stared at the card in disbelief. Was this really happening? After all the pain and humiliation, was she finally getting a chance to pursue her dream? But as tempting as the offer was, something inside her hesitated. This wasn't how she wanted to achieve her dreams. Not because of pity or guilt. She had worked too hard, fought too long, to let someone else hand her success. "Thank you," she said, handing the card back to him. "But I need to do this on my own. I need to know that I earned it." Richard's face fell for a moment, but then he nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I understand," he said, "and I respect that. But if you ever need anything at all, you have my card. Don't be afraid to reach out." They stood there in silence for a moment, an unspoken understanding passing between them. In that instant, Lily realized that this moment wasn't just about her. It was about Richard, too. It was about him confronting the person he had been and finding a way to be better. And maybe, just maybe, they had both taken a step toward becoming the people they were meant to be. As the evening continued, Lily met countless others who shared their own stories of struggle and triumph. Each conversation left her feeling more empowered, more certain that she was on the right path. The gala was winding down, when Evelyn Carter, the renowned entrepreneur who had organized the event, approached her with a warm smile. "You were incredible up there," Evelyn said, taking Lily's hand in hers. "You have a strength that most people can only dream of. And I want to help you share that with the world." Lily's eyes widened as Evelyn handed her a brochure. "This is a scholarship program for aspiring chefs," she explained. "It's fully funded and includes a year of training at one of the top culinary schools in the country. I would be honored if you'd consider applying." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes as she looked down at the brochure, her hands trembling. It was everything she had ever dreamed of. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," Evelyn said with a laugh. "You've earned this, Lily. You deserve this." For the first time in what felt like forever, Lily allowed herself to believe it. As she stood there, surrounded by people who saw her not for her disability, but for her talent, her passion, and her heart, she felt something shift inside her. This was the beginning of something new, a future where her dreams were no longer just dreams, but a reality waiting to be claimed. As the night drew to a close, Richard watched from across the room, a small, genuine smile playing on his lips. He had come to the gala expecting to be praised for his wealth and influence, but instead, he had found something far more valuable: a lesson in humility, a chance to change. And as he watched Lily laugh and talk with Evelyn, he knew that he had witnessed something extraordinary that night, a moment when someone had chosen to rise above the cruelty of the world and shine. And for the first time in his life, Richard felt like maybe, just maybe, he could do the same. Months passed after that unforgettable night at the gala, and Lily's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. Thanks to Evelyn Carter's scholarship, she was accepted into one of the most prestigious culinary schools in the country. It wasn't easy. There were long days and even longer nights, and she often found herself questioning whether she truly belonged among her talented peers. But every time doubt crept in, she remembered the applause from the gala, the look of pride in her mother's eyes, and the words of encouragement from strangers who had seen something in her. And that was enough to keep her going. At the culinary school, Lily poured her heart into every dish she created, her passion and creativity shining through. She was no longer just the waitress with a limp. She was Lily Roberts, a chef with a vision and a dream. Her instructors took notice of her dedication, and soon she was offered the chance to intern at one of the most renowned restaurants in the city. It was a demanding role, but it allowed her to work side by side with some of the best chefs in the industry, learning their techniques, absorbing their knowledge, and growing more confident in her own abilities. Meanwhile, Richard Simmons couldn't get Lily out of his mind. After their encounter at the gala, he had taken a hard look at his own life, questioning everything he thought he knew about success and happiness. The empire he had built, the wealth he had accumulated, suddenly felt empty in comparison to the courage and resilience he had seen in Lily. He started reading about her journey, following her progress at the culinary school, and each time he learned something new about her, he felt a pang of admiration and a hint of regret. Richard began to change in ways that surprised even those closest to him. He started volunteering at community centers, offering free financial advice to people who were struggling to make ends meet. He used his influence to support local businesses and began investing in projects that had a real, positive impact on the community. For the first time in his life, Richard wasn't focused on what he could gain, but on what he could give. And though he was still a wealthy man, he felt richer than he had ever been. One day, about 6 months after the gala, Richard received an invitation that caught him by surprise. It was from Lily herself, and it was an invitation to the grand opening of her very own restaurant. "The Hearth and Table," it read, followed by a handwritten note from Lily. "You told me once that people like me don't belong in places like this. Well, now I belong everywhere." Richard couldn't help but smile as he read the note, his heart swelling with pride. He had watched from afar as Lily transformed her life, but now she was inviting him to be part of her success, to see firsthand what she had accomplished. It was an invitation he wouldn't miss for the world. The day of the grand opening arrived, and Richard found himself standing outside a cozy, beautifully decorated restaurant in the heart of the city. The sign above the door, "The Hearth and Table," was crafted from wood and metal, evoking a sense of warmth and rustic charm. As he stepped inside, he was greeted by the mouth-watering aroma of freshly baked bread, simmering sauces, and roasting herbs. The restaurant was bustling with people, friends, family, culinary enthusiasts, and members of the community who had come to celebrate Lily's achievement. Richard spotted Lily across the room, dressed in a simple but elegant chef's coat, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She moved with purpose and grace, guiding her staff, greeting guests, and making sure every detail was perfect. And despite the chaos of the opening day, there was a light in her eyes that shone brighter than anything else in the room. When Lily finally had a moment to herself, she spotted Richard standing by the entrance. Their eyes met, and for a brief second, they simply looked at each other, remembering the journey that had brought them to this moment. Then, with a warm smile, Lily walked over, wiping her hands on her apron. "You came," she said, a hint of surprise in her voice. "I wouldn't miss this for the world," Richard replied, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "This place is incredible, Lily. You've done something truly amazing here." Lily glanced around the restaurant, her heart swelling with pride. "It's been a long journey," she admitted, "but every struggle, every setback was worth it. This is my dream." "I always knew you could do it," Richard said softly. "You've inspired me more than you'll ever know." They stood there for a moment, surrounded by the hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. Then, in a gesture that surprised even himself, Richard reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I've been wanting to give you this," he said, handing it to her. Lily's brow furrowed in confusion as she opened the box. Inside was a delicate gold key, beautifully engraved with the initials H and T. She looked up at Richard, completely bewildered. "It's the key to this place," Richard explained, smiling at her expression. "I had it made for you months ago as a symbol of everything you've accomplished. You built this place from the ground up, Lily. And I want you to always remember that this is your home." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes as she stared at the key, overwhelmed by the gesture. I don't know what to say," she stammered, her voice thick with emotion. "You don't have to say anything," Richard replied gently. "Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep proving to the world that nothing can hold you back." In the months that followed, the Hearth and Table became one of the most popular restaurants in the city, known not just for its incredible food, but for the warmth and sense of community that Lily had created. She made it a point to hire people who, like her, had been overlooked or underestimated. Single mothers, people with disabilities, those who had struggled to find their place in the world. And every night, as she watched her staff laughing, her customers enjoying their meals, and the soft glow of the restaurant's lights spilling onto the street outside, Lily knew that she had achieved more than just a dream. She had created a place where everyone belonged. As for Richard, he continued to be a frequent guest at the restaurant, not as the millionaire who had once humiliated a young waitress, but as a friend who had been changed by her strength and kindness. He often sat at a corner table, watching Lily in action, marveling at the way she had turned her life around. And each time Lily caught his eye, they shared a smile that spoke of a journey, of mistakes made, lessons learned, and the incredible power of forgiveness and growth. And so, Lily's restaurant thrived, becoming a beacon of hope and inspiration for countless others who had faced adversity in their lives. Her story spread far and wide, drawing people from all walks of life who wanted to experience the magic of the Hearth and Table for themselves. And in that cozy little restaurant, with its flickering candles, and the scent of homemade bread wafting through the air, Lily Roberts discovered something far more valuable than fame or fortune. She found a family, a purpose, and a place where she would always truly belong. As she stood in her kitchen one night, looking out at the dining room filled with happy, satisfied guests, Lily felt a profound sense of peace. She had faced her demons, overcome the pain of her past, and built a future on her own terms. And in doing so, she had not only changed her life, but had also touched the lives of everyone around her, including a once arrogant millionaire who, thanks to her, had finally learned the true meaning of wealth.